Another person didn't tip because the server, it was clear, like I went over, I was like, I'm so sorry, it's been 30 minutes. They're on their lunch hour. It is annoying, but I'm like clearly like I'm hoofing it. Right. And he, not only did they not tip, but then he wrote on the check, very poor service, no tip. I was like, thank you for explaining.
Why are we starting out on a sigh?
I don't know. I'm just tired. Anyway.
Just tired. Tell that to someone with narcolepsy. It's not a competition, but
it's a little
like
bit.
A competition
of a competition.
I mean, I'm competing.
Yeah.
And I'm winning.
I'm genetically. Welcome to episode 19
of I'm Trying.
I'm Jacob Derwin.
And I'm Jhanelle Dennis.
Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you so much. So much. You have no idea how much we appreciate you. There's no quantifiable term. It's just this large mass of appreciation, of existential appreciation.
Existential appreciation? I mean, that's you. I appreciate everyone moderately
Okay.
in the physical realm that can be put into terms. Thank you, guys.
No, man.
You.
My love for the listeners goes deeper than any physical thing.
I don't believe that. If you love our listeners so much,
why don't you marry them?
No, why don't you? If you love that, well, why don't you name some of their albums, their early albums?
There's definitely a band called The Listeners. There's absolutely a band called The Listeners. Yeah, this is a really exciting episode. We have the wonderful Kate Tellers on. She is a longtime staff member at the Moth. If you've ever been to a Moth event in New York City, a Story Slam or a Grand Slam, you may have seen Kate be the MC or the host. She's a great storyteller in her own right, and been in the acting world, in the comedy world, and even the cabaret world, as we learned in the episode. And now she spends a lot of time helping other storytellers become better storytellers, and she teaches storytelling, and she's delightful. And I'm so glad we got her on.
Yeah, I want her to teach me about some storytelling.
Yeah, you need some help?
Some development, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we touched upon this a little bit in the episode, but why I love stand-up so much is that a lot of my stories, they'll go into a tangent and pick upon the funny parts and then completely misdirect or whatever at the end. So it's kind of like the whole story formula, beginning, middle, end. I don't really abide by that, really. So it would be nice to come up with a moral ending to something.
Well, we had a great... Well, that was a weird sound. We had a great conversation after we stopped recording. We were just chatting about, like, when is comedy the better thing? When is, like, storytelling the better thing? When should you be trying to get to the heart of something to change the moral? And when is it more effective to just be a joke? What's your goal? What am I trying to do with my words?
Yeah.
She's a very insightful person. We talked a lot about just trying to be a good person and how to use these things to be a good person. And it really comes off in her, what she does for a living and how she goes about her every day. And I get that. I get the whole thing. I mean, I consider myself a pretty good storyteller, but, like, I'm not as good as plenty of other people. I got a lot of work to do too, you know?
Yeah. The thing that I like with...
Nothing. It was just an awkward pause for a sec.
Oh, I thought there was someone behind me. Don't do that.
I didn't look behind you.
You're like...
I kind of just stretched my back a little bit.
You look like you're waving to someone, the ghost in your
My
head.
hands were down. What are you talking about?
You popped your head up and you're like, hey, you give a head nod.
That silence was Jhanelle being worried that I saw a ghost.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I completely lost my train of thought. Moving on.
We both just walked back from the interview. We're probably a little fried from the sun.
Yeah.
Here's a hot one.
Fried from the sun and fried about losing my sunglasses.
I'm sorry, Jhanelle.
So, that's the thing. Losing something in Toronto, I have a lot more faith. I've lost my wallet there before, and 2 weeks later, it was mailed to my house.
Wow. Yeah.
And anytime I lose something, my mom's like, see, this was all your fault, and, you're never going to find it. And then not always, but more times than not, more times than what is statistically normal, I get it back. But in New York City, I don't know, man.
Yeah. And these were not just like $1 sunglasses like I wear. These are like prescription.
Multiply that by a couple hundreds.
Oh, Jhanelle, I'm sorry.
They're prescription.
Oh, I get it. I've been blowing money recently too. Not because like I want to.
Yeah.
Just like oh, you have to pay for these things to live or to help other people live. And you hope you get it back, but there's always the chance you won't. And you're just like, wow, I'm just throwing money at people, aren't I?
It's worse when it's your fault, though.
Yeah, it is.
Like if they were stolen from me, like just off of my...
You could be angry at someone.
I could be, and I could be like, oh, what? This is the universe. This is the universe. But I know me losing these were completely my fault.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's annoying. I mean,
I do lose a lot of things all the time. It's been a running joke.
Oh yeah. Are you forgetful?
Not forgetful in terms of facts, but in leaving things behind.
Good at trivia, bad at remembering where I put my sunglasses.
Yeah. Or just like I'll walk away from something and not realize that it left it out. Like even here, there's so many times it's been a running joke with you and former person on the podcast, Wolf, that like I will just leave my whole entire purse.
Yeah, you've just left like all your belongings.
Or just left a whole entire bag of stuff, keys.
To be fair, like
phone.
I've always taken that as you just feel like you're at home at our apartment.
I did it also at other bars.
Well, maybe you feel at home at the bars too.
I feel at home at the bar.
We need to have a talk about that. I mean, we're basically a mirror.
Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name.
Or doesn't, and doesn't return your things because they don't know your name.
I should start putting my name on stuff.
Oh yeah, I still have a couple like pairs of clothing, articles of things that my mom wrote my name on for like summer camp that are still there. They still say Derwin on them.
Yeah.
On the back of the neck, or the inside of the neck.
Yeah, I should have put my name and address in the glasses case.
Where in the case?
Yeah,
you think they're in the case? Too. Okay. I was gonna say just hanging from a tag off one of the arms. Is your name.
Engrave it on the tiny sidearm there.
Make it even more expensive.
Yeah, that's the thing that sucks, because these glasses, even though they are expensive, they're not an expensive brand. The case makes them seem like they're more expensive because the case is like Michael Kors, whatever. Kors. They're not Michael Kors sunglasses. The only reason they're expensive is because my prescription. A lot goes into the craftsmanship of someone with one eye that has deteriorated a lot over the past couple of years, and you have to overcompensate to.
Do you ever feel like your head is like lopsided because one lens is heavier than the other?
No, because one lens isn't heavier.
So to have a different... This isn't interesting, is it? I don't know.
It's just all about the reflection. It's just all computers. They go boop, 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 and then they use whatever reflective.
All right.
It's not the
It's
level
not like heavier. It's just
not
different.
like one of the bottle rims.
Okay. I didn't mean like a bottle, but I didn't mean like a Coke bottle thing. I just meant I've never had to wear glasses.
Yeah.
I think I have better than perfect vision, actually.
Probably.
Very good vision.
I used to. And then started sitting in front of a computer every day for...
I do that. I'm fine.
Years and years. But the double screen, that'll get you.
Oh, the double screen will get you. Most of the people in my family, as I've gotten older, or some who are younger, have had to get glasses or use them for some purpose.
Yeah.
I know.
I only needed glasses when I turned... I think 25 or something.
Well, then I'm 1 year away. No. I definitely I feel like my day's coming. I'm the funny thing is I look good in glasses. I remember in high school.
Everyone looks good in glasses.
I mean, I agree. I'm into them. But I remember in high school, my friends had a fake pair. We were all wearing them around as a joke. And I put it on, and there was a moment where I'm like, oh, I could pull this off. And then I'm like, I'm not going to be the guy who wears fake glasses, and I took them off. But I know when that day comes,
I wore fake glasses for a couple months. Also, I felt like I was doing a post-grad program at that time, made me look more studious. And then that was the year they ended up needing real glasses. So I'm like, damn it.
Whoops. Bad predictions. Anyways, let's...
Speaking of losing things, you found something. And
you want to talk about that? Let's do it. So it comes up in the podcast a little bit, and I guess we'll talk about it now. So a few months ago, I was in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and I was waiting for someone to meet them for lunch, and I looked across the street, and on this bench on the divider of the two sides of the road, there was a cell phone face down. And me being a lawful good person, I ran out to the divider and I picked it up, and the phone was unlocked. It was on its camera. It was open, and so I could get into the information. I was looking around. I was trying to find whose it was. So went into their.
You mean the phone didn't have a passcode?
It wasn't locked. It might have had one, but it wasn't locked. So
it was freshly lost?
It was, exactly. So I realized, like, whoever's it is, they probably aren't that far, first of all. And I started searching around the emails, contacts, finding any other numbers I could. I called every other number that was labeled like home or work. And they were all voicemails. I sent an email to herself, the person themselves.
That's smart.
And I noticed in the signature of the email, I mentioned a couple, like, theaters and productions, like Broadway shows. I'm like, okay. And then I find an email has a receipt for a Via ride. Via's a car ride sharing app kind of thing. And I look at it, and the address of the drop-off is literally where I'm standing, which means, and it was like...
You were full detective in here going through... See, this is my number one nightmare. I don't like when people, like, go through anything of mine or, like, touch anything of mine. So losing my phone and having someone go through it, even if it's to help me out, I'm like, no, just delete it. Just throw it into wherever, just burn it.
I'm trying to help. And so I wasn't like I was, like, snooping. I was just looking for their information and their contact. And so I realized, they're, like, in the area and freshly in the area. And that's when I saw the text message. The last thing I saw was a text message. It was between the person and friend, and it mentioned that they were going to a diner, which is where I was meeting my person for lunch.
Oh.
And so it was like right there. It's literally
Black Cat or whatever.
No,
right?
not Black Cat. This was it's just some diner in Lower East Side. I forget where. And so I run across the street, and as I'm about to enter the diner, she walks out and says, "Oh, I think you have my phone." I said, "Oh my God, okay, great."
Wait, why did she say, "I think you have my phone"?
Because I was holding it up, getting ready to go into the diner and hold it up and go, "Whose phone is this?" So
you hoisted the phone.
I was holding the phone up, and like before I even got through the door, she noticed I was holding it because she was walking out to look for it.
Oh,
and so
if only this happened with my glasses.
I'm sorry, Jhanelle. Point is, we met in the middle. She gave me a hug. We talked a little bit. We had like one person in common from one of the shows that she helped produce, because it turned out she was a theater producer. Yeah. And we talked for a little bit, and she was incredibly grateful and very, very sweet. And then asked if I liked theater, and said she was going to try and get me tickets to something in the future. So I gave her my info, and it was very kind of her, and I ended up going to see Pretty Woman.
Whoa, so she emailed you back and said, here's some tickets.
Yeah, a little bit later, she's like, "How do you feel about Pretty Woman?" I said, "Sounds fun to me." Yeah. And so I took my friend Elena, and who was on the podcast.
Yeah.
And we went to see Pretty Woman at, I think it was the end of May. And it was a great time, and all because of her. And it's funny because I called my parents right after it happened.
Yeah.
Because I was on the phone with my sister.
You texted me about it. You're like, "Oh, karma is real."
I was
like,
telling
I told you.
everybody. I was on the phone with my sister when I saw the phone. I said, "Hey, Kate, I'm going to call you back," because I didn't want it to. I'm like, I want to solve this. I want to figure this out. So I told her, my parents, my brother, you, anyone. I'm just like, I just had this like revelatory moment, like, oh, I was a good person, and for once in my life, like there was gratefulness and there was a positive impact. And I was rewarded somehow, and that's like, and it wasn't like an immediate reward. Like it took a little while for like any kind of tickets or whatever. But like,
and you weren't expecting an.
I wasn't. Right? I didn't know I was a theater producer. And even if the reward had just been like, "Thank you so much, this means the world," that would have been just knowing that somebody was grateful and happy about it would have felt like cocaine. Oh my God, I live off that. But the fact that there was like a physical aspect too, there was like here's this thing you can do now. It just felt. I don't know. It made a lot of the times where you go out of your way to do the right thing and like you get like punished for it. It kind of made those feel a little bit worth it. No, kindness never goes unpunished. It's you go out of your way to help people, and a lot of times it ends up just blowing up in your face. So the fact that for once,
kindness,
yeah, I've had a lot of experiences where I go out of my way and to try and help people out who need it, and
then it sets you back.
It sets me back pretty far. Yeah, be it financially or emotionally, and so like being able to do something that was beneficial to both people and that we both feel really good about, and that there was some sort of like it was a good moment. I'm not saying every time you do something good you should expect to be rewarded. I had no expectation of being rewarded, but the fact that it was something so specific and lovely and that she was so kind, it was just a good moment. And so. Yeah, and the reason we're talking about this is because...
It was a good moment. The reason we're talking about this is because I just created a story. Did you see what I did there? I looped it back in, and now we have the nice bow on it. We have the ending. We have the moral ending. I wanted to test myself and see if I could trick us into creating a nice little story.
Into Jacob telling a story?
Yes.
Okay, then.
I'm a story director, not a teller. That's my calling.
Anyways, Kate's podcast is called I'm Still Here, which is kind of like a sister title to ours. I'm Still Here. It's her and a woman named Mary. They're both creatives, writers, performers, and they both have kids. And the podcast is kind of about being creative after having children, having that whole world of responsibility while also still pursuing your personal passions creatively. And they are delightful, and I highly recommend it. I'm Still Here. You can listen to it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I think those are their main two mediums. And you can find out more about the show on ImStillHerePodcast.com. Kate Tellers and Mary Adkins show. It's very, very good. She is just great. I'm so glad she did this. I found her after a Moth Story Slam, ran up to her with a piece of paper. I wrote the name of the show on, was just like, can you email us if you're interested? And she totally did. And
you say it like that?
Could you email? I was like, you can do this if you want. You don't have to. I was nervous. I love her. I love all those Moth hosts. I love Ophira and her. And they're good. They're great performers and storytellers, and they work in a world that I really appreciate. So I'm really glad that she came to do this.
Yeah.
She was a great cat.
Well, first of all, my biggest thing, I'm sure you guys hear this all the time about failure, is failure is the new F word. We're not supposed to say fail because everything's a learning experience.
Of course.
And then, of course, the L word. And then, of course, as a storyteller, we're always supposed to, you're always supposed to reflect and say, how did that change me? But that being said, it's totally unrelated. So I was thinking about... I guess that's because, so I don't think of things in terms of failure. I think of them in terms of was it an whatever. But I have exquisitely failed in many ways. And so one way that I have failed is I have, and probably would if I went back to it, I'm a terrible waitress. And it's one of those things where it's the classic day job. I have been an actor since I went to school. I studied theater and I graduated from school and I had a job with a theater company and I had downtime and I was just ugh, actors wait tables. I can fucking wait tables. I eat, and I got this job at this restaurant I'm from Pittsburgh, called Froggy's, which is, if anyone's from Pittsburgh, it's gone now, this iconic Pittsburgh restaurant. It's downtown. It's where people have, it's not like a steakhouse business lunch, but it's where people, white collar people go and have a good, steak sandwich or something for lunch. And Froggy was the owner, and he was named Froggy because his voice was like a frog because he smoked so much. This is back when you can smoke in restaurants. So he would sit at the round table. It was Froggy and his henchmen, and you had to know what eat, and they would just drink for all day. Whenever I worked, they were there, and Froggy would give me, when I had to wait on the table, which I was terrified of, $4 to walk across the restaurant and buy him Marlboro Reds. And then I would come back and I got to keep the 75 cents change. This was, 1902, guys. This is a long time ago. And I thought, I was that's so decadent. And whereas now I'm it's a total power play that he is not going to stand up and get something for himself in his restaurant. I digress. There was one guy who used to have... he would get Amstel. You had to know everyone's order. He would get Amstel Light with ice in it because I think he was he wanted to drink more, but he was trying to pace himself. So you'd have to ice his beer down, cubes of ice. Right, totally gross. And then Froggy would drink Maker's Mark on the rocks all the time. And then the legend was that he would go on and be on oxygen at night to offset this. Anyway, I would do these so they threw me onto the floor. I had no qualifications. I'd never waited tables before. And I also really didn't go out to eat when I was younger, and I didn't really eat meat. I've always been on and off vegetarian. So I did not know how to work in a place that served meat, and I was a total nightmare. And then there's the lunch rush, and the lunch rushes get totally insane. And if you've ever waited tables, if you get in the weeds, one table goes, the other table goes, and then everything falls apart. So, one lunch, the worst lunch rush was the one where, this was my failure, I poured accidentally ranch dressing down the back of a guy's suit jacket. And he was being gracious, and I was I'm so sorry. I had no money whatsoever. I was I'll pay for your dry cleaning bill. And the motherfucker sent me his dry cleaning bill. Yeah, I'll take that $10 for it. Waitress who's clearly at wit's end, whatever. Another person, same thing, didn't tip because it was clear, I went over, I was I'm so sorry, it's been 30 minutes. They're on their lunch hour. It is annoying, but I'm clearly I'm hoofing it. Right. And he, not only did they not tip, but then he wrote on the check, very poor service, no tip. I was like, thank you for explaining
what in case you didn't understand what's going on here.
In case you were unclear as to why I left no extra money on this bill, it is because you were a terrible waitress. And then, but the worst thing, the other thing in restaurants, if anyone's worked in restaurants, is like the chefs are notoriously volatile. And our Ken was, everyone called him the angry chef. Like he was always furious. But Ken, and this is the only thing that saved me waiting tables, I'm very likable as a waitress. So generally people like me. So Ken did like me. So one time someone ordered pork chops, and I did not understand that there was a difference between pork and lamb chops. So I just heard chops. So I had the kitchen make lamb chops, and then I brought it over to the people, and they were like, this is not a pork chop. I was like, it's a chop. They were like, that is a different animal. And then I had to take this like huge cut of meat back to the kitchen to angry Ken. Anyway, those were my terrible failures as a server. But then it escalated when I came to New York City, and I got hired, should not have been hired at this like very nice Sicilian place on Cornelia Street. I don't know why I'm keeping it anonymous. If you know Cornelia, it's like it's the Sicilian place on Cornelia. And I had no business working there, but that was like finer dining. And I didn't even understand that, for example, the appetizer comes before the salad. So people were out to like a fancy.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
See? You don't think about it.
Antipasti, then salati, then
Yeah. So people were out. They're dropping like $200 on dinner, and I was like bringing the wrong shit out in the wrong order. But I always got a good tip because of my hustle. And I was very likable, and I developed tricks like I would only recommend one red wine and one white wine for anything. So if you were like, what's a good, and you were having fish, like, what's a good wine for this? I'd be like, oh, the Orvieto is so good. And for like anything. And then there was a Primitivo for the red. And I like, that was my thing. And if you just speak with authority, like, does anyone, if you order wine, do you really know what you're, like, no one knows. And I had a couple come in once, like, they were like, you waited on us last year and you recommended the best wine. Do you remember what it was? And I was like, I remember you. It was the Primitivo. And they were like, oh my God, losing their mind. Anyway. And then at the same time, I started, right at that time, I'd always dated fellow creative people. So we never had any money. We never went out to dinner. And I started dating a lawyer, and he started taking me to really nice dinners. And like, so when I wasn't waiting tables, I'd literally be like, oh, so that's how you do the specials. And I'd like take notes. And then I would like do my, I'd like Clark Kent it and like go back to my life as a server and be like, I see. This is what this is. Yeah, but people would order, like someone ordered, the first time they ordered a cavassier from me, I had only ever heard it from the ladies' man on Saturday Night Live, cavassier. And I was like, what's he saying? And I was like, oh, it's actually cavassier, not cavassier. Mm-hmm. Like, because, or someone once ordered a tawny port, and I didn't know, like, do you know what like port is like a after dinner drink. Okay. Tawny is a description. But this person literally was like, a tawny port. And I went to the bar, I was like, someone wants a tawny port. A tawny port? Like, we like sat at the bar and tried to figure out what it was that they ordered. Yeah. Right, like where do the words stop and start in this phrase? But then I just learned. But if I went back to it,
seem like you know.
Oh, you have to. It's all like, and I am very good at looking like I know what I'm doing. And I'm friendly, and I'm like you would never not see me like hustling. So I got the best tips always, wherever I worked, with the exception of like the terrible lunch. Like I would generally pull very good tips, even though I was terrible.
I'm imagining like a montage, like a wax on, wax off, of you going to all these restaurants and being like, take me to the lunch rush, please.
Yes.
I was an intern at New York One a few summers ago, and we interviewed Eric Ripert, who's a very famous French chef who is the head chef of Le Bernardin, which is like a 3 Michelin star restaurant, one of the top rated restaurants in the world. And after we interviewed him, they asked if we wanted to stay for lunch. And so I ate at Le Bernardin for lunch. And luckily, the lunch menu for plebs is easier than maybe the more expensive one. It's like, pick one of these, we're going to give you bread and dessert, enjoy. But even with that, like, just the descriptions of these things, you're just like, I think I recognize the jus from Food Network. Is it a sauce? A soup? Is it a broth? I'm not sure. It was the best meal of my life, and they gave it to us for free. It was insane. But I completely fish out. I'm wearing like cargo shorts.
Yeah.
I'm like hucking around like tripods and stuff, and suddenly I'm eating like seared black bass and veal cheek. I'm like, what just happened?
You feel like, when I worked my first job in New York City, I worked in an acting studio, and I was one of the 2 front desk people, and then there was an office manager, and the office manager quit, and our boss, this was so smart, instead of hiring a new office manager, he just made the 2 of us take over the job. But he was like, but you guys get to go to a Broadway show and dinner on me, which like maybe cost him $500, but he just absorbed a salary that he didn't have to pay anymore. And we were like, you're so generous, because we're so down. So we saw Gypsy on Broadway with Bernadette Peters, I'll never forget. And then we were like, where do we go to dinner? We never went to dinner, and we went to Sushi Samba because of Sex and the City. So we went we were like, that's a fancy restaurant. Samantha went there, and we we ordered, and we like didn't know what to order. Like, we didn't know how to order sushi. So we ordered the appetizer tower, because we were like, that's fancy. It's a tower of food.
Oh my God.
And then we didn't know how to eat some of the food. I didn't know how to eat a soft shell crab, which is a soft shell crab. You just
eat the whole thing.
Yeah, you eat it like a potato chip.
Yeah.
So
I didn't know that.
I legit was at dinner calling my friend from New England, being like, hey, listen, I'm at Sushi Samba. I know. Like, how do you? Yeah.
I know Samantha eats.
Yes.
You know crabs, right?
You know about crabs.
No, I don't have them.
Yeah.
No,
It's a special kind. Yeah. But it is like, you feel like everyone's staring at you in those scenarios. And like, maybe they were. And who cares? Like, who cares if they're like, those people don't eat here a lot? Like, are you a lesser person because you don't go to Sushi Samba all of the time? No, but we were so self-conscious.
I mean, yeah. I have a buddy named James who's Korean, and he speaks like 4 or 5 languages. He's brilliant, and he's taken me out to Korean barbecue a couple times around New York. And he'll walk up, like, there'll be a line out the door, and he'll walk up to the front staff at like the desk, say something. We're seated immediately.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And I'll just let him do the ordering for me, and I'm just like, it's those moments you look around like, I, for once, am the minority. This is interesting. I'm just going to go with it because the food's good, and hopefully no one does anything to it because white guy. You know, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very fish out of water, but usually those are good experiences. Like, I mean, for your taste buds, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was a strange transition in my life, because I was like, falling in love with this dude who's like, woo. This was the way he wooed me, was taking me to these dinners.
It's like Pretty Woman almost.
Totally. There are many parallels to Pretty Woman in this scenario. Did you? How was it?
It was great. I got to go for free.
Great.
It's a long
The
story.
theme of this, fancy life. Sneaking into fancy life.
I found a woman's phone on the street and got it back to her, and she happened to be a theater producer.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I had 2 tickets to see Pretty Woman. It was a lot of fun. It was like if a pop song was a musical. You're just like, I'm just gonna ride this. This is fun. This is good.
I imagine it'd be fun.
Recommended. But what are the parallels to Pretty Woman? So you're being wooed around the city.
I think the parallels was like, there was definitely a class thing. Class is the wrong.
Wait. Jhanelle, you want to, what?
We don't need to talk about that's why it was silent.
Okay.
The parallels.
Notes. We're a professional podcast here.
And on a whiteboard behind you.
Yeah.
Sorry. Continue.
What were the parallels to Pretty Women? That he was like a business dude, and I was a kooky girl, and he was like I think the biggest parallel, and I think they try to fight this narrative in Pretty Woman, is that like he wanted to rescue me, and I think I was at a time in my life I was very vulnerable. My mother was sick, ultimately died while we were together, and like it worked so well when it was like this man with this luxury apartment that could woo me and take me away and do all of this stuff, and then like when it came down to it, I was like, we're 2 completely different people. Like, you're a litigator and I'm an actress, like that like does comedy in basements. Like, this is not, we don't pursue the same things and have like the same matching set of values, and it sort of fell apart. But there was like there was a beautiful love story at the beginning of it, and like beautiful stuff throughout, and then less beautiful stuff, and The end.
Not to harp on it, that's one of your probably most well-known stories from the Moth, right? It's the cheese is in the title. I can't.
Oh, but also bring cheese. Yes,
Yeah.
It was the story that made me go to the Moth. It actually was the story that, not the story, but I was doing comedy. I was acting. I was doing more and more comedy, and then my mother was dying and ultimately passed away. And I had this like simultaneous like. I was really obsessed with coming from a family where we told stories over and over again. I became acutely aware of it as, my mother died and we were gathering over and over again of the way we like almost tell stories like prayer, like we repeat stories. But also I was just like, I want to do something that I like can give my whole heart to. And the kind of comedy that I was doing and that I was around was a lot of the like sort of observational, like distance, like I was like, I'm in a basement kind of making fun of things instead of bringing my whole heart to something. And it was like I'm in a basement and then I'm like temping at an ad agency and waiting table, I'm like doing all of these things. So I like went on this quest, went to the Moth, sat in the show, and I was like, great, we can make people laugh, we can make people feel and cry and whatever, and then became obsessed with the Moth, and then ultimately worked there and ended up telling my story there. Now I think comedy's different, and I think there's more of a spectrum of experience that you can have. It just wasn't the comedy that I was doing or around at the time.
Yeah. How did you find out about the Moth?
I was temping at this ad agency, and I don't even think I realized how much I was like scrambling for a new community or like new voices or something. So I would just listen to podcasts, and this was pre-Moth podcast, but a Moth story was on This American Life. And then afterwards they said, they have shows in New York City, and I went on the website and went to a show.
And you told me that you were like the first person to put together the Moth Radio Hour, right?
Or the podcast. Rather. So they had this idea to do a podcast, and it was right around. It was not my idea. I just want to tell you how not involved I was in the beginning, except for that I have this award or this distinction. But they decided to do a podcast because they'd been recording stories. So it had been around for 10 years at the time. They'd been recording almost all of the shows. And then they were like, everyone says we should do a podcast. We should do a podcast. And right then I'd gone to a show and literally called and been like, I will do anything to work with you. And they were like, great, you can edit the podcast in GarageBand. Like no one knew what they were doing. Podcasts weren't really, they were not the thing that they are now. And so I would go in as the free intern and edit I was like an old intern, and edit the podcast for a couple hours a week. And then very quickly we were number one on iTunes. Number one was like, go podcast team. And I was like, I had literally nothing to do with it. And now it's like, it's crazy because, podcasts are different. The Moth podcast is so different. But back then, that's how it started.
Well, I'm glad that we both had the same entry to the Moth as a free intern.
Yes.
That's good.
When did you intern?
I was 19.
I didn't know you interned there.
Yeah, probably 5 years. Yeah, it must have been 5 years ago now. I needed something to do that summer that wasn't be a camp counselor. Mm-hmm. And some friend's mom knew someone who worked in the New York office in Soho, and they already had their interns, but they said that I could come hang out. And they were in the process of like organizing the office, I think. I ended up just like, I was like tall person boy who was just like putting away boxes and organizing things in Salesforce. And I just did that for free like 2 or 3 times a week for an entire summer. And when I helped out at a few slams, there was the Greenwood Cemetery show. There was like a live. There was a. Oh,
was that the first Greenwood? It must have been the first Greenwood show. If we were in Soho, yeah.
It was Edgar Oliver opened it up.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that.
Yeah, in the cemetery, it was so cool.
It was, and I was just kind of like floating around trying to figure out what to do. I helped like the merch table, whatever. And I did two or three story slams as a 19-year-old. One was good. One was absolutely offensive and should never be heard. And the third one happened years later, and that's the one I almost won the story slam on. So I told a Survivor story, and I came in second because one of the teams did not like the story and gave it like a 7, and the other 2 were like 9.4.
Wow!
So close. It's okay, but so that was my whole thing with the Moth. And I still go sometimes, obviously, as I tracked you down at one of them. But that was. I'm glad. Again, we have that in common.
And see, that goes to show the power of just being around. The power of just hanging and just being that person where they're like, "Hey, you."
Yeah.
Can you help with this?
Yeah.
You're like, sure, why not? And then just by being around, you're absorbing, you're learning, you're taking the waiters' tips.
Learning
then
when
you're
the
in
salad
it.
comes out,
Yep.
Absolutely. What was I mean, you said so you were just doing comedy in basements for what was the routine like before you ended up at the Moth?
So I was doing.
Besides being wined and dined by fancy lawyer types.
It was just one lawyer that wined and dined me.
That
was not my demo at all. at all. So I started as like an actor, like doing the like classic act, 16 bars or monologue, whatever. And then I started doing improv, and I was on a musical improv team for a long time. This is like a different conversation about women in comedy that we had, but we billed ourselves as New York's own all-women musical improv team, which I think we were at the time. It just was like, I don't know, it was a different conversation. Anyway, so I did that for a long time. I did stand up for a little bit, and then I started writing my own stuff. So I wrote a cabaret. I would write, like, then I would, I was getting more into like easing kind of organically into storytelling, but still kind of in comedy spaces. And then wrote a sketch show, just kind of playing around. And back then I felt like sort of confined by comedy, I think because of what I was just talking about. But I was like, it didn't, like the way my brain worked, I didn't like the amount of jokes per time that was necessary. I think I was just more drawn, than to storytelling. Now I love it. Like I find such freedom in it. I think, whatever you're away from, the grass is always greener. So now I'm like, I love the freedom of just being able to like take one thing and riff on it and not have to have it like resolved at the end, Not that you can't do great comedic storytelling. I mean, I like the way the two worlds play together. I like the way that they separate, but I never got in a real groove with it outside of my group. I was always kind of like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And still doing like more traditional theater stuff at the same time too.
Where were you playing? Where was your cabaret?
So I did my cabaret at Danny's Skylight Room. It closed. And also at Mo Pitkin's, also closed. I'm not saying it's me, but everywhere I did it, closed. And then so this was like 2002 or something when I started doing comedy. Yeah. So that was back when there was UCB was like the only game in town, and then the Pit had opened up, but that was back when there was bad blood. I don't know if people remember this, but
no, I never knew that.
God, I want to say things to make sure I don't get anyone in trouble. But basically, you were at that time not supposed to do. So we would book the show. I mean, we were like, we'll do the stages. So we would like go to UCB, do a show, and be like, hey guys, we'll see you at the bar, and then like sneak and then run. And that was when UCB was on what was UCB on forever? 26th, and the Pit was on 27th and like 7th. This was old Pit. And so we would like be running through the night over to the Pit and sneak in and be like, where were you? Nowhere. Like,
where's that trench coat for?
Right. Yeah. What was that? And then the Magnet opened, and I don't know if like the three were at odds. It wasn't like that, and sort of like willful ignorance, but like we would do all three theaters, but you'd sort of like be like, no, I'm just going to take a walk with 4 people that I perform with in Chelsea.
Don't mind.
Anyways.
Yeah. Just a brisk walk.
Yeah. Taking a brisk walk while I vocalize. No reason.
Oh my God. So you were playing all sides. Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
We tell everyone who's on the show what their comfort place is, something that makes them feel good after things maybe go wrong, or maybe you've been waitressing for just too long. It's been a rough day. You spill ranch dressing down someone's sukut and they charge you for it. What do you do? What makes you happy? What something you can consistently go back to?
Well, I would say like consistently since I've been in New York City, which has been since 2002, I go to Rockaway Beach. and it's taken me through every stage of my life. Like when I was in my early days, like single, lady in the city, I would go by myself, and I'd put like,
by yourself?
Yeah, I would go by myself with a book, and then like my apartment keys in my wallet. This was maybe I think I had a cell phone, and I would like put it next to the water because I was by myself, and like hope the tide didn't come in because I'd like swim and then grab it and pull it out because I was by myself. And Rockaway Beach was just like it was not obvious. Pre-Sandy, way before Sandy. It was just not where you didn't find like a lot of single gals hanging out there. It was like a lot of families that are more local to there. And then like when my husband and I started dating, we would go with our friends. And then now that we have kids, we leave at 8 a.m. and go there. It's like my favorite. It's my happiest place. I love it. And my kids love it. Yeah.
Are they also bringing books and hoping they don't get washed away, or are they just more of a...
Oh, no one reads anymore. No, it's... Like the fact that I have gotten to read at all in the past 4 years of my life is a freaking miracle. But no, at the beach I can. It's just like chasing one person and like trying to keep people out of the water and whatever. But we're there at like 9:30 in the morning. It is the best because we do essentially the reverse commute. Like as we're and now Rockaway's so popular, as we're going back, we're like pointing out to our kids, like, look at all those people. And you see like all the hipsters in their like short shorts and their like hangovers. And we're like, our day's over.
Time to go nap for the rest of the week.
Yes, nap time. Yeah.
Well played. I don't think I've actually ever been there. Now that
Me
I think
neither.
about
It's
it.
the best.
I'm from Long Island. Like I've gone to Long Island beaches forever, but never Rockaway. Weird.
I've never owned a car ever in my entire life.
Yeah.
And maybe never, like,
You in
truly.
Pittsburgh too?
Nope, never did. Grew up in Pittsburgh, went to school in Pittsburgh, never owned a car. I grew up in this like very, like, my husband will say I went to Sweet Valley High. It was like this upper middle class suburb that, you know, like, we were kind of the outsiders. And one of the ways that we were outsiders is that my parents divorced. So we had like 2 single parent homes. So they each only had one car. And so the car was never available. And all of my friends had these like married parents that had like extra cars. So like it never made, they always had a car. It was like, take the Beamer, like take whatever. And I'd be like, my dad won't give me the Nissan Sentra. So I never did. And then I went to college and I didn't. And then I moved to cities and I've just gotten used to it. Also, we're really into like public transportation in my family. So
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
yeah,
Save the world.
we're trying.
Can I ask what
straw?
school in Pittsburgh?
High school?
Oh, it wasn't college. It was
Carnegie Mellon.
Oh, it was
I went to Carnegie Mellon, yeah.
Okay, cool. There you go. I was just in the area. And what suburb, if I can ask?
Mount Lebanon.
I know the area. There you go. I don't think it's that close. Our friend, my roommate, was from White Oak. Is that it?
Keystone Oaks?
It's white something. White cedar, white oak, white. Well, this part isn't going on the podcast. Anyways.
Unless we start a new podcast. It's like, does Jacob know what you're talking about?
Does Jacob know where his friends are from?
Well, here's the thing with Pittsburgh is that people are always like, oh, my friend's from Pittsburgh. And then they'll name a place that's like 2 hours outside of town. And I'll be like, that's not fucking Pittsburgh.
You're right.
Yeah.
No, you're totally. I went to school in like Northeast Ohio, and therefore everyone's from Cleveland, or Dayton, or Toledo, or Akron. I'm like, you're not from any of those places.
Yeah.
You're from some tiny little place off Mansfield.
Yeah, I'm only just learning about those places now because I'm Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
And from your roommate being from Pittsburgh and at work needing to find people from the area.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, Slippery Rock.
Oh,
all these little towns, I think, up near Iron Mountain. So it's really interesting, all these little towns that are these huge hubs. And is it true that there's a baseball team or something there where there's the pierogies and the pierogies have a race?
Okay, first of all, there is not a baseball team. It's the Pittsburgh Pirates, which have at time, not in our lifetime. No, it should in my lifetime. They were great. No, they've not won a World Series, but they've come very close to getting to the World Series, which is pretty great. The Pirates are Pittsburghers are obsessed with Pittsburgh. Generally, many of us are. And one of the things that Pittsburghers tend to love is their sports. Now we have the Steelers, which are, like I would say, objectively speaking, an excellent sports team. Feelings on the NFL aside. But the Pirates are a baseball team, and even though they're like generally terrible, and like the common consensus is like it's just like setting yourself up for heartbreak every season because they're like they always like almost get there and then like fall apart. But going to, and I'm not a fan, I'm a fan of sports fans, not sports, but going to a Pirates game in Pittsburgh, it's such a Yinzer is what Pittsburgh is called, such a Yinzer experience because it's right on the water. We have 3 rivers. It's right on one of the rivers. Yinzers, because we say yins. Yins is our y'all. Like yins guys getting downtown. The Pittsburgh accent is very thick.
Sounds like an emo band.
Yeah. What, Yinzers?
Yeah. Or even just the way you're speaking. Like,
yeah. It's a really thick accent. But the entire experience is Pittsburghers are so obsessed with all the Pittsburgh things that they have like a mullet cam because a lot of people have mullets in Pittsburgh, and then they'll do a pierogi race because we have a lot of Eastern European people in Pittsburgh, so pierogis are like a classic Pittsburgh food, and so they have like adults dress up like pierogis and run around the stadium, and they, it's like you can get all of the like the classic beers and the Heinz ketchup and all of the stuff like happens in that space as you're in this beautiful stadium, with the sun around you and the like glistening river behind you. It's just an amazing thing to do if you're in Pittsburgh. I think like if you asked me like what my dream is in my life,
pierogi race.
No, close.
That's my dream.
Close. My dream is to sing the national anthem at a Pirates game.
Ooh, that's doable.
I think it's like it could happen. I mean, I just have to like try. I mean, like I'm not saying like every year I try. Like I've never actually even looked into how to do it. But I should.
You
right.
should.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just contact whoever is in charge of that, and so make him believe that you're the most famous person from Pittsburgh and New York, and you got it.
It's me, Franco Harris, Joe Manganiello. Joe Manganiello went to my high school and college.
Oh yeah.
We were in the same production. The production, if you ever hear Joe Manganiello talk about that made him become an actor, was this high school production of Oklahoma where he played Judd. I was Armina in that production.
Whoa.
No one knows who Armina is. She has one line. She's one of Lori's friends.
Counts. That's
Counts.
awesome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, you're welcome.
It means the world.
All right, listen to Kate's podcast, I'm Still Here, on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and follow her on Instagram at
Catadoodle.
Catadoodle.
It's Catadoodle.
Okay.
It took me a while to see it, but I'm pretty sure it's Catadoodle.
I'm just going to spell it out.
Sure.
It's C-A...
Nope.
It's K-A-T-A-D-U-D-L-E.
Yep.
And if you see Kate at Moth Story Slam, say hi for us, please. And also, if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on iTunes. It helps word about the show spread like I was gonna say rumor, but let's just say like a good deed.
Aww. And of course, make sure you're subscribed to easily download new episodes. I'm Trying is hosted, edited, produced, and scored by Jhanelle Dennis and me, Jacob Derwin. Our cover art was created by the fabulous Sammy Kappa. See more of her work at sammykappa.com. That's SAMICAPPA.com.
You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at ImTryingShow, and if you want, you can follow us individually at Jhanelle Dennis and Jacob Derwin.
If you've screwed up or embarrassed yourself and are looking for help
or pity,
reach out to us on Twitter or email at ImTryingShow@gmail.com, and our team of crisis experts will be more than happy to assist you.
Well, reasonably happy.
Thank you so much for listening, and in the words of Billy Joel, bottle of red, bottle of white, it all depends upon your appetite.
Why are you laughing?
Because you didn't say the upon, you just said on.
Oh, yeah, I don't know the song.
On. It all depends on your appetite.